Should we shame Joel Olsteen? And is my partner having an affair with their friend that's non-sexual?
What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast. I'm Brandon.
I'm Tyler. We're brothers.
We're therapists.
We're not afraid of your questions.
So bring it. All right, Tyler, those are about the most random questions you could come up with. But before we get into those interesting questions, I got a really quick review here from Angie. It says, some of the best down-to-earth info I've found to overcome trials and struggles in my marriage. Real, open, honest examples. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie.
Yeah. So before we talk about Joel Olsteen, real quick, Tyler, we have big news in our family this last week.
Big news, big news in our family.
Yeah, so just wanted to throw a shout out and congrats to our little bro, Rex, who finally got down on a knee and proposed. He's engaged now to an amazing woman, and we're just so happy for him. So just want to give him a shout out. I know he listens, and just want him to know we love him and we're excited for him, and excited for his fiance, Sarah, as well. So.
Big time. Yeah, Rex, we love you, man. And it's just when it made me think of like when you watch all the Lord of the Rings trilogies, how it's basically the same recipe over and over again, where they work themselves into a place of total utter darkness and you think there's no hope, and then all of a sudden there's a ray of light and they find a way out, and then there's hope again. And that's kind of where it was for Rex. Well,
he's a great example of the fact that you can create shifts in your life.
Big time.
And you can change what you create in your life through your beliefs and through your thoughts. Going from, I resent God, I'm mad at God, I hate my life, things aren't working out the way I can. And I saw him shift to I'm going to be happy. I believe that I am happy. I'm going to be healthy. I believe that I am healthy. I'm going to be lovable. In fact, I know that I'm lovable. And what do you know? When he actually started believing that,
it started to come to him.
He attracted in
Yep.
lovability into his life. It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing. It was really beautiful thing. So yeah, that's an awesome thing for us. We're all excited about that.
Yeah. Okay, but on to Joel Olsteen.
Okay. All right.
So read the question so we know what you're talking about.
Here's our first question. It says, chivalrous shaming. Is it ever, capital ever, okay to shame someone? Like when Joel Olsteen didn't offer his mega church for Hurricane Katrina victims. He was put on blast and then finally opened it up to them. Are there situations like that where it's acceptable to turn to shaming someone for what they should be doing that they aren't if it's for the greater good? Can you shame someone for the greater good?
There's so much in this question, and there's so much in this question that makes my skin crawl a little bit, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So, and we can take it deep here and really look at some philosophical principles that I think would be helpful. So here's one of the first things that I see. I hate to tell you, but whoever asked this question, you don't have the power to shame somebody. You don't have the ability to shame somebody. Do you agree with that, Tyler?
I think I do, but explain it further.
I can say the worst, nastiest, awfulest things to you, Tyler. And no matter what I say to you, there comes a moment where you decide whether or not you're going to hunker down in shame, or whether or not you're going to be resilient to that. And the fact of the matter is, whatever I do, whatever I say, that's about me. You can take it personally, or you cannot. You always have that power. That's about me. That's just feedback about my world to you. Now, I might be giving you feedback about you, like you're bad, you're dumb, you're stupid, but you still can say, okay, I'll soak that in, or I won't, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. and I actually tend to agree with you on that, Brandon, that's one of the kind of hot things that when somebody comes to me and says, "You're shaming me," the minute that they say, "You're shaming me," they're instantly placing themselves by choice, whether they know it or not, in the victim role.
Yes.
And
And they're
so
creating more and more shame.
right, exactly. And so then they increase their own suffering because they're choosing to believe that they're being shamed. Right.
Right.
So I think we both agree on that. I another layer to this question though is that is it okay to say Joel Olsteen's a blank in order to get him to open up his church?
Well, so I absolutely think it's important to confront things when we don't feel like they're right. So I can give Joel Olsteen my feedback. I can say, Joel, you have a bunch of followers, you have a bunch of money, people are suffering. It seems like it would make sense for you to help people. I could like shut down and not speak my truth because I don't want to hurt his feelings, and that doesn't do anybody any good. So I don't think my intention would be to shame him, because if I'm shaming him, what he wouldn't do is step into action. But my intention might be to confront him, which is, hey, wake up, buddy. Like you might be missing something here. And he may listen to that. He may not listen to that. But I do think it's good to speak truth. And I do think it's good to step into conflict. What do you think, Tyler?
I think you're right, Brandon, but I think coming back to the question, there's probably some appropriate ways to do it and less appropriate ways to do it. And let's even take appropriate out of it. Let's just say effective. Let's just say there's some more effective ways to do it and not. So if you're going around and saying, maybe you're getting on Joel's, social media and saying, "Hey, Joel, here's what it looks like from my perspective. It kind of would make sense X, Y, and Z. I don't have all the facts." That's different than saying, "Dude, you're such a hypocritical tool bag."
You POS. That's not helpful.
Right. In fact, I would submit that most of the time when we do the shaming, so to speak, when we call the name, when we assign the label, when we say somebody's a POS or, a non-Christian tool bag or whatever we want to say, what we're actually doing is we're inviting that person to continue to give us more of the very thing we're angry about.
Yeah, it's not helpful. Say more about that, Tyler. How?
Well, because think about human nature. If let's say I say that he is a hypocritical, non-Christian tool bag. All right. The minute I call him that, we can no longer have a dialogue about whether or not it's Christian to open up your mega church for people who don't have a place to go. We're going to be talking about his defensiveness, and he's going to have to explain himself differently and defend his honor. And then he's going to get frustrated, and I'm inviting him to then basically hurl back the same kinds of communication that I'm giving to him. So I'm in a very dramatic way going after a personal attack, which then...
In what way, Tyler, does it make sense that if we don't want somebody to be a POS, right, to go and call them that? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't want you to act like one, so I'm going to call you one. It doesn't make sense.
Well, exactly. And I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier is that the minute that I do that, I am now making this about me and getting my own self-gratification of calling him the name instead of trying to be constructive at actually getting done what I want to get done.
Yes.
And I think, there's a great book on this called Crucial Conversations, which talks about how to stay principled. Even when other people are trying to make things personal, you keep it principled. And so the shaming part, the way that this question is being asked, I'm interpreting the shaming as making it personal.
Right.
Because otherwise it's not really shaming if I'm just saying, hey, like, this is kind of weird, and I think our political setting right now is nothing but that, and look at where we're going.
Well,
is anything productive getting done?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I do want to speak to that for just a second. It's when you become a victim that person loses their humanity. And so, like, when I look at the other side, whether I'm a Democrat or a Republican, or if I look at Joel Olsteen and say, look, he did something to me, now he becomes this monster. He becomes this figment of nastiness, as
Mhm.
opposed to
He's got a really nice smile, though.
a really nice smile. Yeah, but he's, because he's different than me, he disagrees with some of the principles that I believe in. Not Joel Olsteen, but I'm just saying somebody,
Right,
right?
right.
Somebody out there. I villainize them. And once I villainize them, what that does is it justifies me to act in ways that are pretty despicable, ways that I can treat them like they're not human. And our political climate right now in our country is that. And the problem, there's a huge problem with it. And the problem is that we need to have dialogue. Our whole democracy is set up to have checks and balances, to talk through things, to process things, to figure out what will work best for our laws. It's not about winning and losing. It's not about being a villain or being the right person or the wrong person. It's about the governance of our country and moving forward in the right direction. I know we've taken this a lot further offline here than we had planned, but it's the same thing with Joel Olsteen. It's the same thing. It trickles down to your partner, to your marriage, to working with your kids. When you see their humanity, when you see their goodness, when you have positive regard toward them, even though they did something that you disagree with, then it's workable. You're out of the box, right?
That's exactly right, Brandon. And then there's another aspect to this that I think is important that needs to be spoken here is that the minute that I judge that other person and call them that name or shame them, so to speak, is the minute that I've also, in doing so, you use the word despicable, I've done a despicable act on my own character. And
Yes.
so now I'm actually feeding myself shame at the same time that I'm shaming somebody else.
Right.
Because I'm acting against what I would profess my values to be.
Right.
And so now I've got to go and deal with my own internal shame, which I'm trying to justify so that I can continue to do things that don't line up with my values. And it's a downward spiral that I end up sending myself on instead of just taking accountability for my own feelings, owning it in a non-dramatic way, speaking it. And I don't think anybody was wrong for speaking those things if they felt those things.
Right.
It's the negativity and the judgment that comes with it that goes along with this idea of shaming somebody.
But it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, watching the last presidential debate, I think most of the country at the end of it just was left with this like nasty taste in their mouth, like ugh.
Oh yeah.
Like that wasn't a debate. That was like a, each person, a race to the bottom there. And it's interesting. What you're talking about is, what it did to the American people as we watched that debate was, oh my gosh, our leaders, like, do they have that? Do they have integrity? Do they? Because what we watched them both do, I believe them both. And it's interesting, whatever side you're on.
You
one
can
way or the other.
You can pick your winner.
But what we watched them both do was give up their power and give up their personal integrity to the other person in that argument, right? And so it's a great example of, if Joel Olsteen is being a douchebag, then how in the world does it make sense for me to go be a douchebag to him to get him not to be a douchebag? It doesn't make sense.
It's the same old saying that Mom used to always say: "Two wrongs don't make a right." Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
but Tyler, I think it's really hard to love someone who's done something that you disagree with. At times, it's like,
especially when you're in pain.
Yeah, I'm in pain, and you did that. What?
Yeah.
You see the world that way. I can't. I have a hard time seeing how you see the world that way. But can I still love you even though you see the world so differently than me? And the answer is absolutely. And the polarization of things is scary. And we're watching it happen more and more and more in our society. So don't be a part of that, please.
Yeah, amen.
Okay. So
Good question.
should we go on to the next one?
Let's get the next one. I'm going to read this to you. It's a little bit lengthy, but it's worth reading. It says, "Am I screwed? It sounds rough, I know. My wife and I disagree on whether she is having an affair. I say yes, 100% no-brainer. She says I am crazy. Why the differing perspectives? It is because I believe she's having an emotional affair with her best friend, who is also female. If this person wasn't a male, there would be no ambiguity at all. I relate to the betrayal trauma as it makes sense of my world. We've gone to counseling, and the counselor felt that yes, it is an emotional affair coupled with addiction. Again, it makes sense of my world, but she vehemently disagrees on all fronts, refuses to go to counseling, and continues to spend hours and hours every day with her friend, and when apart, constantly texting her with lines like, I love you more than life itself. This does not work for me, but we have 4 kids, 2 of whom are still in the home, and I have been reluctant to leave with the kids still at home. Is it possible to move forward as a couple and recreate connection when we have polar opposite views of the relationship she has with her friend? She has told me that if there was an ultimatum given, of course she would choose me, but would hate me for it. Does that not really say who she wants to choose? I have come to realize I had a weak boundary system and would constantly put myself in situations I was not comfortable with to avoid rocking the boat. Historically, I would say yes to everything, even if deep down I really wanted to say no. This has changed now, and I'm being viewed as not nice as I once was. Basically, am I screwed, and is it possible to move forward when you cannot agree on what is going on with an outside relationship?"
Do you want to start with that one, or?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. There's actually a couple of things in here. Um, we're gonna base this off of what you shared as the facts. We may not know this as the facts. She may see it differently, and it would be nice to actually have a conversation between the two of you. But if what you're saying is true, it is possible that she is having an emotional affair, even if it is not sexual at all. And it sounds like in this case, that's probably the case. And it sounds like there's some level of enmeshment going on with her friend that is probably not healthy, because it's wreaking some havoc in your family life and in your relationship with each other.
I just want to caution him a little bit on this is kind of it's almost a denial strategy. And what it is it's getting caught up in the semantics of things. If you can sit and fight with your wife about whether it's an emotional affair or not, are you really getting down to the actual main issues going on here? Whether you call it an emotional affair or whether you don't call it an emotional affair, maybe she's spending too much time with her friend. What if we called it that? But like, when you talk about boundaries, what boundaries of yours are being broken in that relationship? If she's giving all of her intimacy and emotional energy to somebody else, whether you call it an emotional affair or not, that's happening.
Right. I actually think that that's part of the problem here. You can hear it inside the question, that it's almost like they've gotten themselves comfortable with wrangling over the definition of what an affair is, hoping that either one of them will be validated in what they're doing.
Yes.
Instead of getting down to what the real roots of this are, which are that there's something going on in the relationship that isn't working for him.
Yes.
And he doesn't even get to articulate this or share the principles of what's happening that's not working for him, or the values that are not being respected. And then they end up in this constant fighting, which I guess keeps them together, but ultimately won't lead to more connection or understanding.
Exactly. That's well put, Tyler. And the fact of the matter is they can stay stuck on this argument. Who's right? Who's wrong? Is it an emotional affair? Is it not an emotional affair? They can stay stuck on that argument for a long, long time. But the way out to move forward is not about arguing about who's right and who's wrong. It's about understanding. And so it's about him understanding why she wants that relationship with her friend the way that it is. And it's about her understanding why her having that relationship is uncomfortable for him and not, in a lot of ways, not okay for him. So the way out is not about what they do, and it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about actually hearing and holding space and seeing the other person and processing through that. That has to happen.
They need to come to a place of true understanding. And so I can imagine him having a discussion with her that wouldn't include you're having an affair, and would more include something like, hey, I'm having a real struggle here because it feels like your relationship with whoever your best friend is, whatever her name is taking a lot of your time and emotional energy, and it's being sucked away from our family and from our relationship. I feel a little bit threatened by it, and I feel like maybe I'm feeling neglected at times in the relationship, and I just need you to understand that it's really hard for me to see this happening, and I start to resent you and her for the relationship that you have.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to sound a lot different than you're having an affair emotionally.
And you better admit it.
Right. And you have to, well, and I think where he's probably going is that we have to get on the same page so that we can go to work on it. Like if she
I would label it as an emotional affair. I'd label it as that.
Oh, it's totally an emotional
But what
affair.
I don't want him to do is hear me say that, run to her and say, Brandon said it on the podcast. So my question, see, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. That gets you nowhere, right?
Yeah, right.
So there's a couple of other things that he said in that question that are really important. One being, he almost alluded to, I am hanging in there for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to get divorced because of the kids. And so, but then the other part of it, he said, is basically, I haven't had masculinity in the marriage. I haven't been honest. I haven't been myself. I haven't been boundaried. I haven't been, powerful in a good, healthy way. And now I am stepping up into that. And I applaud that. It's really hard to go from a doormat to somebody who can stand in their truth. And it will feel to the partner like, oh my gosh, like, you're mean.
You're mean.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be mean because a person who's a doormat oftentimes will swing the pendulum all the way to the other side of like, no, now I'm firm. Now I'm mean. Like this is who I am. And interdependency or real healthy attachment is you knowing who you are, trusting yourself, speaking your truths, having those boundaries, but also really having empathy and understanding and an openness to them as well. Both those things are there in a really healthy, boundaried person. But I'm not trying to turn this on you. I'm not trying to blame you for this situation that your wife is in with her friend. But I hope you can take this not as blame, but what I hope you can do is take a step back and see how you've been a part in creating something like this in your marriage, with your lack of boundaries, with your lack of strength as an individual in your relationship.
Right. And I think that's actually when he said in that his question, I'm being seen as not as nice as I once was. It's like, of course you are. If there's been a status quo for that many years in your marriage and all of a sudden you're now learning how to have a voice, you're learning now how to value the things that are most important to you and not shy away from those things, then by nature, that change that you're making is inviting a change into the whole system that is hard to make. And so you're not going to be seen as not nice, but if that's why you have to know that you're doing what you're doing based off of the right values so that you can hold the line anyway. And
but Tyler, here's the thing. When it comes to being nice, like, and tell me if I'm wrong on this. My ability to be nice with you or with my spouse actually increases when I'm boundaried. My ability, I can love you so much more. I can understand you. I can see you because I have boundaries. So when you go from lacking boundaries to just kind of rigidity, that is not like when you go from lacking boundaries to having boundaries and knowing who you are, then you can actually love them more. Is that, what do you think?
Well, I think what happens is that because you're not betraying yourself and your own values, you're not in that space of your own, whatever it is, self-betrayal. So it allows you to see the person as the person, to approach that. The healthiest boundaries are done from a place of love.
Yeah, they're
And
vulnerable and they're
they're
love.
they're vulnerable, and they're done with the place of love, and they can still seem mean, right?
They can cause friction
Right.
and
They like,
conflict.
exactly. If I'm setting, you've got kids, you know how your kids are going to throw a fit the next time you have to follow through on a boundary when they don't clean their room, or when they hit
Oh,
their
my
sibling,
kids
or
are angels. They just do chores all the time. Just
right,
everything they're
right. But the minute you follow through with that boundary, you're the worst dad in the world, and they can't believe it, and they're going to throw a temper tantrum. Does that mean you were being mean? No, it depends on.
you just explained my night last night. Like, you just totally illustrated it.
Right, right. And if we don't have thick enough skin, then we end up like Veruca Salt's dad, like letting our kids walk all over us, and same thing in our marriages, which is interesting because we both want to be in a relationship with somebody who is strong enough on their own, because it's attractive to us to be with somebody who's confident.
Right.
And the minute somebody starts to step in with some confidence when it hasn't been there before, it feels off. And because it feels off, it feels different. I'm going to push back on it. But deep down inside, we know that we want that. We need
Right.
that in our relationships.
Right. Yep. I would look at it and say, what, again, it's not, I don't want to blame you. Your wife is choosing to do the behavior she's doing, but if you could understand her, you might catch a glimpse of, something that you could provide in the marriage for her that she's missing. Why is she going to her friend for a lot of the emotional, intimate connections that she's getting? And what can you work on to help her feel safe and validated and seen in the relationship? If you can understand her, if you can not take personally what she's doing and understand her, you'll get some of those answers. If you can't, if you're just rigid with boundaries or a doormat, then you won't get those answers, and it won't help you move forward.
It's just so hard to do that, Brandon, when you're the one who feels like you're being attacked or neglected or mistreated. What you just said to this guy is, you just said to him, you know what, you should go and actually get really curious with your wife's affair partner to see what they're providing that you're not.
No. I didn't say go get curious with the affair partner. I said go get curious with her.
About what the affair partner is actually doing and providing.
Yes, and I stand by that.
Okay, and I actually agree with you. But when we're in drama ourselves and we hear somebody say something like that to us, it's really hard to take, even though it's true.
Absolutely. Welcome to therapy.
Yeah, that is therapy, right? And so it's like, but the truth is that it could actually be empowering if you were to go to your wife and say, hey, look, like, I really genuinely want to know, like, what it is that you're getting from here, and if there's something that I could do to help fill some of those needs, and I'd be willing to go to work on some of those things, because I am wanting to choose this relationship.
I want a connection like that, like you're getting her.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some things that I still don't know if I could ever get behind, that I don't agree with. And here's the principles that I feel like are
here's my
being
boundaries
walked on it. And this is kind of where I'm going to stand on it. And he said in his question, she would be willing to give up her friend, but she'd hate him for it.
Right.
Right.
And in that, she's saying, I'm getting a need met, and I'd hate to get rid of getting that need met. And so instead of just being stuck on the surface level here of, well, if I have a boundary, you're going to hate me, stop and hear what she's saying. She's saying, I really like getting this need met from my friend. I'm willing to choose you. So there's an opportunity there for him of, oh, I want to know what that need is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to understand, how she fits that for you. And I want to understand how I can step into some of those things for you in your life. right?
And he'd be helping things go right in terms of what his overall goals are. And there's another side to this. When she says, I'd be willing to give it up if I had to, if you told me to, but I would hate you for it. That's also her work and her choice to decide whether or not she's going to hate him and resent him. And it would be on her to actually explain why she would hate and resent him, which would go into her own value
You're
system,
absolutely
her
right.
own
If she gave up
boundaries.
that relationship, then she's choosing that.
Right.
And so she's accountable. And so it's to play
And
the
she should own
victim and
that.
be in resentment and all those things. It is not his fault. She
Right.
needs to own that. Yeah.
Right. If he goes and speaks his truth and then she does it because she feels guilty, but she's going to resent him for it, ultimately, she's still choosing it. And so she's going to have to come to ownership of that choice. And part of getting that ownership is being able to speak her truth as well. And what's missing in this whole equation is the truth. It's, it's getting lost in the weeds here, like you said, of all these different ideas and semantics, instead of saying, here's where my heart is. Here's where my heart is. We're married. We both want to be together here. And boy, we would theoretically both want to help things go right. So let's figure out how to help things go right.
Right.
You know, and
you know, Tyler, sometimes it feels like we just kind of end up at the same place all the time, which is reality acceptance, and then ownership and accountability of what you want to create in your life. And it's, you know, what we battle every day, all the time is you know, work your way out of that victim position, because we know you're powerful. We know you can move forward. We know that you have within you to create some shifts in your life. It's just like what we were talking about with Rex.
right, exactly.
And he's a great example of that. And you could give all kinds of examples from your clients who you've seen face reality, take ownership, take accountability of what they're creating, and not live in resentment and victim anymore. I see it every day. And I also see the opposite every day. I'm stuck. I'm a victim. I can't change. And it's somebody's fault.
Mm-hmm.
So
Brandon, to the final part of his question, is he screwed?
well, I want to just say this to him. We have done a poor job at validating you today. And so if you're listening, the fact of the matter is it is hard if your spouse is getting connection outside of your marriage and you desire connection. What you feel about it is valid. Anybody would feel that way, and it's okay that you feel that way. Okay. I think we already answered the question. You're not screwed. You have a lot of power to shift things here.
I think that's where we're going here. I think both of us jumped in on the let's get the change happening before we got the validation going.
We did it backwards.
Yeah, we did it wrong today, probably. So hopefully he hung on the whole episode. But yeah, it's hard. It's like getting punched in the gut emotionally when your partner's looking elsewhere for connection, when you're the one aching to be the one to provide some of that. But you're not screwed. And the passion that we talked about it with today is based off of the idea that I actually firmly believe that the more you step into what you're already stepping into with your masculinity, and if you can be curious and you can start saying, how do I show up as the best husband I can be and stick to my values, that you'll invite some of that change, and the change will be ugly and it'll be hard, but change always is.
Yeah.
So you're already maybe in the process. And I think if you hold the line, if you see that what you're doing is fighting for the truth and you're inviting her to step in and share the truth too, there's absolute hope here. You could end up with a marriage that's far deeper connected than maybe you've ever had in your lifetime.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's hope.
Yeah. All right, you guys, if you liked this episode, and by the way, Joel Olsteen, I don't know his heart. He might be a great, amazing, awesome.
Me too. Yeah.
He might not be. I don't know. But that was a good backdrop. And that's what we kind of used the backdrop of that question that we got to discuss some of these deeper principles. So it's nothing against you, Joel. But If you like this episode, you guys, please rate and review it. We could use some more ratings and reviews. And please share it with anybody who you think that it would be helpful for. And have a wonderful, awesome day. See you guys
later.